And welcome back to Washington Commanders Insider. Today, we are talking about the NFL draft. We're going to be talking about the players that the Washington Commanders selected in round 4, 6, and 7 of the NFL draft. We're going to be talking about how those players are going to fit in with the Washington Commanders. And so before we jump into it, I first wanted to remind you to hit that subscribe button, just like Jaden Daniels is going to be hitting Terry McLaurin for lots of touchdowns this upcoming season. And so in exchange for hitting that subscribe button, I'm going to give you nothing but daily content around the Washington Commanders. So make sure you hit that subscribe, you hit that like, you join the Washington Commanders Insider family as we talk nothing but Washington Commanders football. And so with that being said, let's go ahead and jump into the content for today. And let's start with round 4, and let's start with wide receiver Jaylin Lane out of Virginia Tech. And so, look, I think that I love this pickup a lot. And let's start with point number 1 with Jaylin Lane. This is a guy that can instantly contribute in the special teams game. He was a terrific punt returner. And what I love most about his highlight clips is just that once he got the football, he immediately turns his shoulders upfield and he gets moving. So this is a guy that is not going to waste a whole bunch of motion. Once he gets the ball in his hands, he is going to get to it. And he has some incredible speed. He ran a 4.34 40. And so that is terrific speed. If you look at his highlight clips, you will see that this is a guy that can outright run. And so love that point number 1, that he can contribute immediately as a punt returner, which means that there's not a whole bunch of pressure to throw him into the rotation as a wide receiver. But I do think that with this type of speed and really his playmaking ability, he certainly is going to be a player that will find the field for the Washington Commanders early. And so next up, speaking of playmaking, that is exactly what Jaylen Lane does. This is a player that, look, he's great at the wide receiver position, but he's terrific if you give him an end around. I thought that he was great in the screen game as well. We talk about the fact that he can return kicks. He is just a player that you just want to get him on the field. You want to get him into open space, and you want to see what he can do. Because like I said, once he gets into the open field, the speed is there. He's elusive. This guy, it just has playmaker written all over him. So Jaylin Lane, that is point number 2. Next, look, I loved his catches. I think that this is a guy that he gets the football at the top of the catch radius. And so he's not a guy that lets the football get on him, meaning he's not a body catcher. I think that he did a great job as far as plucking the ball out of the air. So great hands. You see that. And I thought that he was good in traffic. Like, I like the fact that he will catch in traffic. I like the fact that he does not shy away from contact over the middle of the field. And so that was another great point with him. And then lastly, he reminds me of a player like Jamison Crowder. Like, I think he's a player that when he contributes not only in special teams, but also to the wide receiver room, I think he's going to be a player that is going to win underneath. I think he's a player that is going to take advantage of missed tackles and just be able to kind of get out of these arm tackles and make some huge plays. I think he's a player also, too, that'll win in the zones as well. And so one of the weaknesses that they talk about is that he's got to get a little bit better with his route tree. And then also, too, he's got to get a little bit better as far as being deceptive when he's trying to set up corners and things like that. And again, when you're talking about an NFL draft prospect, everybody is going to have some weaknesses. And so I do not really buy too much into that. I think that when you get them into your building, you believe enough in your coaching staff that you're going to be able to coach him up. And I think he's a player that certainly the Washington Commanders are going to be able to coach him up. I think they're going to be able to maximize his skill set, but I think that he could be instantly an impact player on the offensive end for this offense. And so that's great. I mean, just to see what he can do, and just knowing that this is a guy that just makes the wide receiver core that much more dangerous for the Washington Commanders. And so next up, round number 6, I should say, for the Washington Commanders, they went with a linebacker out of UCLA. That is Kane Medrano. And so with him, look, he is a guy that he reminds me a bit of a corner. He looks like he could be like a corner / safety. I did see that often in his NFL profiles. And so I did see that actually in the NFL.com profile that they have. But this is a guy that, look, he looks like he can get downhill. He looks certainly like a linebacker that can be versatile in that regards as far as going sideline to sideline. So I think his lateral movement looked very good. And I like the fact that he has a track and field background. Like he was a track and field star. And then when you see him in coverage and some of the interceptions, you can understand just how his position in high school translated to him being a good linebacker, because the picks that he has, it looks like he's almost playing wide receiver, which is what he was in high school. So you see that immediately translate. So I see a player that can be solid in coverage. And so that is great to see. He's willing to go downhill. Like I said, he's a sideline to sideline type of linebacker. Now, the thing about him, I think that they're talking about here in his NFL.com profile is that you're looking at a player that had a high missed tackle rate. So that is one of the things that he will have to clean up on. And that is being able to maximize, when he gets to the ball carrier and making sure he gets them down. Also, too, another thing that he does or he struggles with is he gets lost and it's easy to get blocked at times. And so he's going to have to be a little bit more fluent as far as getting or eliminating these blockers. And so instead he gets kind of swallowed up into that. And so that's one of the things that he'll need to get better at. But again, this is a guy that I think is immediately going to be a guy that can cover some tight ends. I think he's going to be great there. The quick lateral transition, like I definitely see that as well. And as far as just what he tested at the combine, some of his numbers, look, it was a 4.46. That is great speed, had a 1.57 split, 38-inch vertical and a 10.5 broad jump. So I think he tested very well. And it'll be interesting to see if he becomes a player that can be a rotational piece. He also did play special teams in college as well. So that lets you know that he can immediately be just a contributor to the football team that way. And so lastly, pick number 7, the Washington Commanders go and they get a running back. And so this is an interesting pick. And, I think that I like this a lot. And I think that this is a guy that certainly can get on the field as well. And so we're talking about Jacory Croskey-Merritt. And so with him, it's an interesting story because he was at Arizona last year. I guess he ran into some eligibility issues. He was on their practice squad. And so that's one of the things that you just see this guy and his willingness to compete. So he's been on the practice squad, and I guess he was in the Senior Bowl, and he looked very good out there. And one of the things that I liked about him initially is just I love his elusiveness. Like I like the fact that when he gets into the open field, he's a guy that, yes, he will go and, seek out contact and finish runs, but he's certainly a player that knows how to make defenders miss. And so I thought that was point number 1 with him, is just his ability to be elusive. And then next up, what I like about him is just his patience and the way that he is able to find the hole in the offensive line. Like I think that he does a terrific job as far as just moving well in the initial the seam where the run is supposed to go. So if a defender is filling that, he seems to move in the right direction to get out of trouble that way and get into the open field. So he has a great feel, I think, for a one cut and then just get off and go. And so I love that about him. Next up, with his speed, he looks like he's a home run hitter. Like he looks like the type of player, just with the way that he runs and his highlights and things like that, like he's a player that maybe could be a home run hitter. So that's huge. Next thing I liked about him was the balance. I thought that there were several times in his clips he's getting hit. He's finding ways to stay on balance and just get every last yard out of the run. And so I like that. And so he rushed for 1,190 yards and 17 touchdowns on 189 carries in 2023, which is why you see him in the New Mexico jersey, because that's before he transferred over. We just talked about the eligibility. And so when I looked at his NFL draft profile on NFL.com, one of the things that they say here is that he could be a RB2 at the next level, definitely a below average third down value. But again, his creativity, his talent and pop give him a chance to become a good RB2 at the next level. And so I do see that he has a path to definitely get onto the field, especially with maybe some of the question marks, maybe around what is going to go on with the running backs that we have, the contract situations and things like that. And if any of the running backs do go down, I do see, that there is a chance that maybe he does see the field very early. And so that is going to be one of the interesting things to see. I want to see how he responds when we get to the OTAs and the rookie camps and stuff like that. Some of his weaknesses that they talk about: 24-year-old rookie. So that means he's older prospect coming out. So you wonder, has he already gotten to the ceiling? That's one of the questions out there. Another thing that they say is a weakness is that he finds a lot of heavy conclusions. And so, or collisions, excuse me. So that means that he's going to actually go and seek a lot of contact. But again, I told you he's pretty elusive to me. I think that he can avoid the contact if he wants to. Next up, the passing game, and that being something where he would have to develop. So he was kind of a non-factor is what they call it here, as a weakness. But the highlights that I did see with him catching the football, he certainly looks like a guy that he has some good hands. He looks like he understands like how to set up his defender and stuff like that. I think it was like a wheel route on a linebacker. So it looked good. And I think that that's something that you certainly can coach up. And so we'll see if he becomes a rotational piece, if he even becomes a starter. I think that that's something that could be very much on the table. And so lastly, before we jump out of here, I wanted to talk a little bit about round 1 and 2 for the Washington Commanders. And so just going back to day 1, where we saw Josh Connerly Jr. come off the board from Oregon, to the Washington Commanders. So Josh Connerly Jr., offensive tackle to the Washington Commanders. And so, look, I think that this was a terrific pickup. I talked about this last night, that here is a guy that just a great athlete, one of the fastest offensive tackles there in this draft. Talked about it with Todd McShay in the video I saw with him, saying that he was definitely in his top 3 as far as tackles were concerned. Loves to compete. I loved his press conference talking about, coming from Oregon, he has not lost that many games. And so I think that immediately translates. Cannot wait to see what he's going to do. Certainly sends a message, because the Giants, they picked up Abdul Carter. All right. So at number 3, he could easily become maybe one of the best pass rushers in the division. You get a guy that performed very well against him in college. And so I think Adam Peters is sending the message. He is trying to protect Jaden Daniels. He wants to maximize that window. He's on that timeline with him as far as the rookie contract is concerned as well. You literally have maybe an anchor piece on your offensive line, right? And so you have got to love that. I think he's going to be huge for us, and he's certainly going to be huge for opening up some lanes in the running game as well. And so next up, the next pick that the Washington Commanders went with, this was round 2 for us, and picking up a very physical corner in Trey Amos. And so he played for Alabama, transferred to Ole Miss, and the one thing that a lot of people talk about in his draft profile, and if you look at the clips, very physical up front as far as in press coverage. Like, this is a guy with his hands, heavy hands, solid. Like, once he jams you, he's got you. All right. And so I think that is the first thing that you love about him, the physicality that he brings. Next, his composure. Okay. So when it's 50-50 balls, you're throwing it up, you're in the hand battle with the wide receiver, he seems to slow down a bit, be able to make a play on the football. That's terrific. One of the things that they talk about with his weakness now is that he might get a little handsy at the top of routes, which is probably going to draw fouls at the next level. Next, they talk about in coverage sometimes, in zone coverages, things like that. Sometimes he'll get lost, kind of leave some openings there. So that's something he's going to have to clean up. And then at times, maybe a bit over aggressive, that you can maybe put a quick move on him, get to the inside, maybe on a quick slant or something like that. And I said this in yesterday's video, that if that happens, you got to be able to be up on top of that wide receiver and make that play, because if not, then you're talking about a wide receiver that's running loose in the secondary on a quick slant, right? So those are things that he's going to have to clean up, just refining that technique, not getting beat with that inside move. So we'll see what happens there. But I love the fit, because if you bring him in, he pans out, which I think he is. This is a player that now you can move Mikey Sainristil, I think, more to his natural position, which is inside. You're banking on the fact that Marshon Lattimore is going to take off this season, which I do believe. He comes back this season from the hamstring. He has a full training camp, and I feel like he gets a full offseason with the defensive playbook and just getting in alignment with what the Washington Commanders want to run. So it could be a very nasty secondary for the Washington Commanders, which really was one of our strengths defensively, is taking away the big plays. And so one of the players that they really compare Trey Amos to is a Patrick Surtain II that plays for the Denver Broncos, and I love it. I mean, when you talk about a player that can turn into a possible island for you, you can imagine Marshon Lattimore at the prime. You have Trey Amos coming up to his prime and being a shutdown corner on his side. And again, with Mikey Sainristil, we know exactly what we're getting from him. Again, that secondary starts to look awfully scary against any team that wants to test it. And so anyway, let me know in the comments here what you guys are thinking about our draft selections here. Was there one player that stood out in this year's draft, and what is the player that you are most excited to see this upcoming season? I would love to hear what your comments are. And so, as we always say around here, look, go Commanders, and I will see you guys on the next one. All right, peace.